Today is Tuesday, and on this channel there should be a compiled news of Tuesday, because it's what I do every week, and in fact I love doing it. But we're going to have to move the content grid around a bit on big data news, and talk about another topic that is very important, and that I believe we need to address as soon as possible. Because it's a very complex issue, and because, well, we've been dealing with it for a few days now, which is the issue of tariffs, these new ones that the United States is imposing on productions in Asia, technology, clothing, and a lot of other things. Well, in today's video, we're going to talk about the impact on Nintendo. We're going to talk about Nintendo's prices, which indeed are not going to drop. We already know, it's confirmed. The head of Nintendo of America talked about the price of the games, he talked about Mario Kart, he talked about the consoles, he talked about everything. I'm going to put that in the video. But we also have to talk about other ridiculous things. What's going to happen to those of us who live in Latin America? And I think even the Canadians too, because now they just screwed themselves over, the Canadians too. I know that most of you are not Canadians, but just so you know that all of America is getting screwed over. Adidas, Nike, Nvidia, Intel, Apple, Nintendo, PlayStation. Everything is in the same bag. All will be impacted to some degree by the policies of Donald Trump's administration. Well, let's see how I tackle this issue. I'm going to try to do it as big data news as possible because I'm not an economist, nor a political scientist, nor all that. But I'll tell you what I know. Does that sound good? Like we always do, right? We'll discuss video games, then other areas of technology, followed by politics and international trade. And then we're going to talk about PlayStation, we're going to talk about Xbox. About the impact of all this, I'm going to mix everything up a bit. Pay close attention and follow my thread, because we're going to move fast. Mario Kart costs $80 because it costs $80. What do you think? Dan Bowser declared, "Who is this bald guy you're seeing on the screen right now? Who is the chief executive officer of Nintendo of America who came out to talk about the prices of Nintendo games?" At least in the United States, therefore, in all of Latin America, Dan Bowser commented that the price of Mario Kart World is good, high, because it is so, because the game is worth it, because we have to pay that, because it's great. And that they from Nintendo are going to evaluate the price of the games based on the duration and length of all the games they publish. And that the price of Mario Kart World is an exceptional price and that it is not the norm. From Nintendo of America, they assure that they are going to invent the prices that they consider correct for their games. Depending on what there is in production, the value of the title, how long it lasts, and other things that they know. But the price of Mario Kart is not going to be a standard for Nintendo games. I guess it's like when it happened with Breath of the Wild. I think it came out at 70 when the rest of the Nintendo games were 60. Well, now it's happening with Mario Kart World Sale at 80 when the rest of the games are going to be 70. I think on one hand it's okay, right? Not all games should cost the same because there are games that are much bigger, much more produced, with much more content than others. But on the other hand, it scares me a bit because, well, when they apply this, it's usually to raise the prices, not to lower them. Nintendo has published games that, based on this concept, should not have been sold at full price. I don't know, Kirby the Forgotten Land comes to mind. Kirby the Forgotten Land should have cost $40, $30. Well, this is very subjective because we will all make our different evaluations. But okay, we know that there are titles that are very big and maybe should cost a little more, but there are also titles that already charge us too much. Because here is the clear issue. The man says Mario Kart World is super important, it's super big, we invested a lot in it, we're going to charge more for it. What about the other games you charged me more for without the same investment? What's the difference with the one you removed? Well, it's supposed to be the difference that helps you develop more ambitious and bigger games, right? That's what companies do. Not all their products have the same profit margin. Corporations make excuses to justify a game's price, insisting it's worth that amount and to stop questioning it. That's essentially what Dan Bowser implied. On the other hand, we must discuss the Nintendo Switch 2 in Latin America and the United States. Because I have bad news. Dan Bowser also clarified that the $450 price in the United States for Switch 2 was not influenced by the tariffs imposed by the United States. And they weren't even taken into account at any time. That is what we were speculating. Some of us were perhaps speculating that those $450 included some tax, but that's not the case. What you're seeing now is how they're applying all of Trump's administration taxes to the Nintendo Switch 2. And how much does the console cost us now? Parentheses like this, tiny. See our video discussing potential console prices in Latin America. By doing this, I avoid repeating myself. If you've seen it, you know what we're discussing. I'll include it at the end and in the description. It was also announced the delay of pre-orders in Canada, meaning the whole region is screwed. If you were considering purchasing a Nintendo Switch 2 in Canada, as you were from Mexico and said you skip taxes in the United States, I must inform you that it's not possible to do so. Pre-selling has stopped in Canada. And Bowser commented that Nintendo is actively evaluating what the impact of the new tariffs would be on Nintendo's products and strategies throughout the region. Later in the video, we're going to talk about who exactly is responsible for screwing us over, the Latin Americans, with United States policies. Because it's easy to blame Trump and his entire administration, but in reality, the issue is a bit deeper. There's still a bit of hope because they say that hope is the last thing to be lost. So it's the last thing we're going to lose. And it's that Vietnam and the United States are currently in talks to address these new tariffs put in place by the Donald Trump administration. For those who missed the recommended video, we discussed Vietnam because the Nintendo Switch 2 is made there and now we're talking about Nintendo. But the tariffs that Trump applied were applied to almost all the major economic powers in Asia that manufacture technology. I'm warning you that the same thing happening with Nintendo will occur with many other things. The General Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam, To Lam, I never thought I would be talking about this person. He offered to reduce tariffs on United States imports to 0% and asked the United States to do the same. That is, no taxes should be imposed between the United States and Vietnam. Even from Vietnam, they proposed to buy armaments and other things from the United States to strengthen relations. I swear, I never in my life thought I would be talking about, what was it? General Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam. This is surreal, but is everything so related? This is important. Nike, for example, manufactures 50% of its footwear in Vietnam, meaning that 50% of Nike's products are going to increase by at least 50%. In the United States, Adidas manufactures about 40% of its footwear in Vietnam and also about 20% of its Puma clothing. A large part is also made in Vietnam. Apple has moved its production to Vietnam, mainly including AirPods, iPads, Apple Watch, and MacBooks. That is, except for the phones, a large part of Apple's products are made in Vietnam. This 40% tariff will make Apple's products costlier, not just in the United States, but in all countries that depend on the United States. For distribution, Samsung also produces approximately half of the smartphones. And things that it does in Vietnam or have parts from Vietnam. Intel, for example, operates a gigantic assembly plant precisely in Vietnam. And will Trump's tariffs affect the distribution of Intel chips? Which totally transcends Nintendo and reaches the world of PC gaming. And of course, it's going to affect Latin America as long as we're talking about countries that depend on the United States and don't have official local distribution. I've been studying this topic all day, including the number of factories they have. Anything else? Vietnam will become more expensive due to Trump's tariffs, affecting thousands. Now I named some clothing ones, Apple and Intel, as they are more or less popular and might interest us. Asus also manufactures and assembles in Vietnam. And yes, you guessed it, some Latin American countries lack official assets distribution and rely on the United States for supply. And in those countries or regions, Asus products are going to increase. Thus, with absolutely everything that comes from Vietnam, and not to mention what comes from China. Because among all the policies of the United States, those that were taken in February and now in April, China is going to have tariffs of almost 104%. That is, the things that are made in China, which are many, are going to increase a lot in value in the United States. I'm not here to campaign for Donald Trump. Do I really care a horn and a half, his political career, or what he does? Because this man is the democratically elected president of the United States. And I'm not American, I didn't vote for him, I don't live there, so I don't have to care about anything about Donald Trump, and I'm not here to defend him. But there's something that needs to be made very clear, and that is his tax policies. Donald Trump's administration is not the problem, it's not the cause of the price increases in Latin America. The blame for all this The potential $1,000 cost of a Nintendo Switch 2 in Latin America is not Donald Trump's fault, but rather the fault of Nintendo and all brands involved in its pricing and distribution that underestimate Latin America as an important region and see us as some kind of backyard of the United States and nothing more. This needs to be made very clear. If Nintendo respected the Latin America region, where it sells millions of consoles and games and has millions of fans, if Nintendo truly respected this region as an independent region, would it have direct distribution, at least in Mexico or Brazil? Two countries where Nintendo sells and two countries with a very large consumption of video games, not only because of the population size, but because of the consumption of video games in those two countries. Nintendo never set up official distribution, neither in Brazil nor in Mexico. And that's why Trump's tariffs affect us. Trump's tariffs should be irrelevant to us. But that's not the case because we are constantly underestimated. One thing is American companies like Intel or many others that you say, or Apple are American. Okay, it goes there. They increase things for them. They increase for the rest of the world because they are American. Okay? But companies that are from outside, like PlayStation or Nintendo, they keep underestimating the Latin America region to everyone equally. They treat us like an annex of the United States, and our distribution and what reaches our regions depends on the United States. The blame for all this increase that we are going to suffer is not Donald Trump's. The Americans with their things and their country and their policies, they live there and that's it. If you are from the United States and you want to complain about this, it's valid, but the rest? Actually, the problem we have is with Nintendo, not with Trump. Well, maybe there are those who have problems with Trump, right? Right now, this man's management wants it to be very expensive. Manufacturing in China, in Vietnam, in Taiwan and all that, so that their own brands go back to manufacturing in the United States. Again, and that's totally valid, his people voted for him so they can do whatever they want. But unfortunately, it's going to affect all of us who buy any product that goes through the United States that doesn't have direct distribution in our countries. What brands are these? Which ones specifically? The examples are too varied to draw a conclusion. For example, Brazil has a certain quota for direct importation from Nintendo, but not in consoles and peripherals, but in some nonsense like amiibos and toys and stuff like that. Companies like Intel have direct distribution in countries such as Argentina, Chile, and Colombia, but not in many other territories. The PlayStation 5 has already been launched. There is a lot of product distributed, and more or less the console and all its products are established throughout the Latin America region. But what if the PlayStation 6 were about to be launched, for example? Well, these tariffs would directly affect the price of PlayStation 6 because Sony has its distribution throughout the Latin America region depending on the United States. If the PlayStation 6 were released now, it would cost around $1,500. This is Sony's responsibility, not the United States. But anyway, as I was saying, there's always a light of hope. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Because if all this persists, if these tariffs are not renegotiated, if indeed the 50% is applied to Vietnam and the 100% to China, brands will be required to distribute their products directly in Latin America rather than through the United States. Establish distribution points in some countries. From TAM, they'll have no choice. Selling a $700 console in TAM is already hard. Imagine at 1,000, 1,200 and similar numbers. If distributing throughout the United States suddenly becomes expensive, costly, complicated, and hinders your business, they might end up getting encouraged and set up official distribution points in countries with ports very close to China, such as Mexico, Peru, or Chile. Perhaps all of this will pressure for it to end up happening, as it has happened in the past with telephone brands, televisions, and other technologies that do have official distribution in many Latin American countries, and that's why we have price differences offers, and we don't depend on the United States for some things. To finish the video, I would like to ask you to put me in the comments. If you saw Nintendo Switch pre-sales in your territories, in your regions, and how much did you see them for? It's very important that you put the country and price, if possible, in dollars or in your local currency, but put the country, especially if you've already seen pre-sales. Let's see what's happening in different countries. Because I have the reality of Mexico and more or less that of the United States and Spain, but I lack the reality of the rest of the countries. Well, nothing happens in Spain. This does not affect, because indeed Spain is a territory respected by the main brands of the world and has direct distribution. I'm referring to direct distribution that the company itself we call, Nintendo for example. Nintendo Spain is established, which is responsible for importing the consoles from Vietnam, from China, wherever directly to Spain, and distribute them. So, there's no handover. We in LATAM have indirect distribution. It first goes to the United States. Does that market get satisfied? And private companies or companies that are given the concession for distribution. In the United States, they take it to the rest of the countries. And that's the problem. This series of tariffs and taxes will be applied to us Latin Americans who didn't vote for Trump and aren't in the United States. Well, we're screwed. We're screwed forever. Unless something changes, unless tensions between Asia and the main producing countries and the United States ease, any product that goes through Gringolandia is going to increase for us. Then there are a bunch of side effects that could happen, like increases in regions. That doesn't matter to the United States, but nevertheless, the price of products increases to compensate for the products of another country. There are many phenomena I'm unqualified to analyze. In fact, I'm not qualified to analyze this issue at all. I did my best. As I said before, if I make a mistake or see something wrong, and any of you is an economist or knows about it, please comment politely if you have expertise in economics, as I would appreciate your input and am open to correction. Write to me, we can do a podcast where we talk about this, because we are all curious about the future of electronics, video games, products, and clothes that we purchase. That it goes through the United States or even further, because to the Europeans, the American brands that are exported to Europe are indeed going to affect them. I hadn't thought about that. This is more complex. It's more complex than I can handle. Well, let's see how it gets resolved. Today's video was a news compilation from Tuesday. I didn't do it. You'll be realizing why I decided to tackle this topic. But tomorrow we're going to do the news compilation from Tuesday. A Wednesday like this, varied with something else like this. We change a bit, the trios, these from Nintendo and all that. Let's talk a bit about something else. I thought it was important to discuss this now. I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. Like, share, and invite others. That's how we continue to grow. Watch this video to know more about the price of Nintendo Latin America. And watch this video to know what's going to happen this April with the most important video game event in the Spanish-speaking world. Bye.